Thank you so much for joining us on the Dwellynn Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes. I've got Blake Janover with us today. Hey, Blake, how you doing?
Doing great, Ola. Really grateful to be here on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad we connected. So, Blake, you've got an amazing profile. I've seen what you're doing in the multifamily space and the real estate industry. Can you just tell our Dwell listeners a little bit more about yourself and kind of what you've been up to lately, actually?
Sure. So I'll try to keep it short. I started in the multifamily commercial real estate finance space about a decade and a half ago. I'm still a young man, but I started very young, and I had well, it wasn't quite pleasure, but I did have the experience of being filtered through the last cycle. So I experienced some very high highs and some very low lows very early on. Um, so right now, our business is two-pronged. The first one is creating a online platform that educates and empowers multifamily owners and investors. And although we really like helping the little guy, which relatively speaking isn't so little, right? You're talking about people that are investing in properties $1 million and up. But although we do put a lot of energy into that, we've also done a lot of work around middle market developers and owners and investors. And that being said, that kind of leads into, so on the education side, that leads into the financing side. We've got a team of capital markets advisors that works all day and all night on everything Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, CMBS, bank, credit union, some mezzanine financing and preferred equity and LP raises and stuff like that. But I think I just got long-winded here, so let me.
No, I think that's fine. That's a great introduction. I've seen some of your sites, amazing work. Really, just thank you for putting all that content out there. So before we even go to all of that, can you just give us kind of a history? You said you went through the cycle, so you had some high highs and some low lows.
Sure.
You're very fortunate to have gone through that. I did go through that cycle, but not as a real estate entrepreneur. So I don't know if that was a good or bad thing. So can you kind of tell us a little bit more of how you got started in the real estate space, and maybe some of the deals that you did in the earlier start of your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So experiencing the last cycle as a real estate entrepreneur is a double-edged sword. You get devastated economically, emotionally, physically. It manifests itself sometimes, and that hurts. But there's life lessons that last a lifetime. So I guess I got started. I was probably 18 or 19 years old, and I went to go work for a residential mortgage brokerage. And I'll try to abridge this. So I went to go work for a residential brokerage. It wasn't for me. I did really well. What wasn't for me was reporting vertically to people that I didn't really have aligned values or goals with. So I quickly broke off on my own, and it was a lot of fun. I set up my own company. I was very young. We started from nothing in my apartment with no furniture. That was back in the days when there was big, thick monitors and, huge computers, and, Compaq and Dell was like the fanciest stuff in the world. And we had them all over the dining room table, and it got to the point where all my buddies were working for me and sleeping in my house and waking up in the morning and cold calling. And we built a business that was, I guess we had 50 loan officers at one point. That's, maybe I'm rounding up, maybe 30, 40. We had a pretty big shop. And I guess the first commercial deal I did was probably around 2006. I'm guesstimating now, but I arranged, I don't even know how old I was, so I'm not going to guess. But late teens, very, very early 20s, I arranged the recapitalization of an office portfolio in Miami Gardens. It was something like a $25 million bridge senior, and then a mezzanine piece on top of it, and then LP equity on top of that. So I recapitalized it for a conversion to office condo at maybe 99% and change of the total project cost. And it was a lot of fun. It was a big commission, but it was a boatload of fun. So anyway, so I did this for a while. The market turned, and I went from young, invincible millionaire to almost homeless and poor and hiding my cars from the repo man and negotiating with Florida Power and Light not to turn off my electricity. So that so there's that. I wasn't expecting to tell that whole story, but
no, I'm glad you came in, you're vulnerable about the story, as opposed to, look at me, I never fail, everything works out for me, I'm fantastic. So I really like, that vulnerable side. And I've got a few follow-up questions. So you were young.
I've got failure down to a science. So I can share lots of failure stories.
Welcome to the club. I think that's really what makes us learn, right? And that's how you continue to win, by learning from your failures and not making the same mistakes. So that's the beauty of, not getting something right the first time.
I would say, I would add to that if you're a dummy like me, then you make mistakes and you learn from them. But if you're really smart, you can learn from the mistakes of other people by reading or listening or whatever. And I'm trying to get smarter at that, but along the way, I'm still falling on my face regularly and learning like that.
The good thing is at least we're doing something, meaning you're learning from your mistakes, right? If you can learn from others through biographies, books, podcasts like this one, yep, or like your website, for example, I mean, that's a cherry on the top, right? So I guess that's a great start. So you started this business, you said you had about 30 to 50 people, things were going great, and then things weren't going so great when the recession hit. How were you able to bounce back from, young, feeling invincible, had this business, and then the music stops? How were you able to pick yourself up and do it again?
Well, that's a really good question. I want to say I expected to talk about some, Fannie Mae small balance multifamily loans, but no, we'll dig into my psyche. So that's a really good question. It was probably a combination of some healthy confidence and youth and ambition. I was always, as far as I can remember, very ambitious and confident in some places, perhaps with zero confidence in other places. But there was also an air of, showing my dad. There was probably some contention from my youth. I wasn't what you would call an easy child. I wouldn't wish how I was on anyone. So that kind of manifested itself later in me trying to prove myself to myself and externally to family. But I wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't really have this irrational sense of everything is possible. So if you asked me then, and I guess less so now, but maybe even now, I would have told you that anybody can do anything. And if I wanted to spend my life meditating and focusing on how I could elevate myself from the ground, I believed I could do it. So, and I don't know if I necessarily don't believe it now, but I do believe it's a bigger challenge than I thought it was then. So yeah, it was these things that caused the bounce back. And my life in business has been a bit of a yo-yo effect, as a good friend of mine called it. So I've had some very high highs and some very low lows. So I had that high in the mortgage business, and then I had a low, And later I ended up building with partners one of the biggest call centers in the Caribbean, and we built a huge financial advisory business. And I later did work with running social media campaigns for presidential candidates in the Caribbean. But historically, coupled with each of these highs was a crash, which was usually derivative of over leverage, lack of input from people smarter than me, doing everything by myself, and some probably self-destructive behavior. So anyway, this time around, hoping for for non-yo-yo, looking for measured, steady, long-term growth.
Yeah, I can totally relate to a lot of, what you said. You get to a point in your life where you kind of want some sort of, some sort of stability, right? So, and I think that's a good place to be as well. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Before we get to all of the, finance, agency.
That's okay. No, you don't have to. This is your show.
I mean, typically, right? What I say to my guests is anyone listening to this show can literally go on Google and learn about, senior, mezzanine, bridge, all kinds of terms, and they won't need a show, but like mine. So I think what we bring is really the psyche, as you mentioned, like the mindset of how to be successful. How do you pick yourself up? How do you stop telling yourself, I don't have money, I can't get started in real estate? That's what I feel like a lot of our listeners want to. It's not just the tactics and the technicals, which you're going to tell us anyway. It's also the mindset that actually activates those tactics and execution. So really quickly.
Well, I just want to say, I think you touched on something really important. And you said it was something about what we tell ourselves. And I would say the biggest, or one of the biggest, I want to choose the right word. I guess culprits is an acceptable word, but one of the biggest challenges or culprits that inhibits our ability to succeed is probably self-talk and those things that we tell ourselves. And the surface stuff is like, I don't have enough money, you need money to make money. And then the deeper stuff is maybe I don't deserve it, or I'm not lovable, and that's a rabbit hole. That's a deep rabbit hole. But you did mention, and I did want to say that I forget who said this. Maybe it was probably Tim Ferriss. This guy's super smart, but it was something like the worst coach, the most verbally abusive coach in the world is the one in my head, and I wouldn't wish that guy on anybody.
Oh, that is so good. I've never heard that one before. That is so powerful. It's
not mine. It's not mine. I took it and I messed it up, but it definitely resonated with me.
Yeah, it's definitely good enough. It's definitely good. It's that inner civil war, right, that we constantly have. So I think that's a good segue actually to my last question, about kind of like, I guess mindset is, so if somebody is saying to themselves, oh, I keep getting multifamily deals, but the thing is, my PFS isn't, solid enough. I can't get the loan by myself. What would you say to that person?
I'd say, why do you have to do it by yourself? So I think that's a good starting point, especially in real estate. I guess it's not especially in real estate, specifically in real estate, but really anywhere. Your only limits are those that you self-impose. So these obstacles that you present now about my personal financial statement, my balance sheet, my net worth, my liquidity, my credit, these things are easy to overcome with hard work. So whether you want to raise money from a syndicate of investors and take no bank or agency debt, and just raise the money yourself, or if you want to partner with somebody that's experienced and get them to sign the debt, either for a fee or for partnership. Sometimes people get short-term greedy. They don't want to give away this or give away that, and it's at the expense of building a long-term upward trajectory of growth. So it's like, I'm not going to give away 50%, 60%, 70%, 80% of this, so I'm just not going to do it. And talk about self-limiting behaviors. There's a famous expression like, it's better to have what is it, like, 10% of something than 100% of nothing. Something like that. So a lot, financing and things like that are really easy to solve in real estate if you sit down and think, and if you're willing to do the work and go out and surround yourself with the right humans, and raise the money, and anything worth getting is generally a lot of hard work.
Yep, definitely. Definitely. So if I'm a multifamily syndicator or an investor, like myself, listening to the show and thinking of maybe, reaching out to you and kind of getting my next deal funded, can you give us an overview of kind of the loan product that you guys offer and just how you can help my business?
Yeah, forgive me, I have to stay caffeinated. So we offer the full gauntlet of product, right? So it's everything that you've heard of or that you already know, but everything has nuances attached with it. So when you think about financing, it's worth considering the fact that even companies like Blackstone and Related Group, these guys hire intermediaries and advisors to focus on finance. So there's no way to be the best at everything. You could be, and you and I were kind of talking about this before the show. I don't know if I can bring this up, and I'm just going to, because you've been bringing up plenty of stuff. So, you were talking about your iTunes podcast listenership versus your YouTube viewership, and you pointed out, like, hey, they both require two totally different skill sets, and it's hard to be a master of two different things at the same time. So I'm focused on, primarily my podcast listenership, and I'll grow the YouTube visitorship supplementarily. So I don't even know if that's a word. So anyway, I digress. So the point is that all of these loan products have different nuances to them. So for small investors, for loans between 1 million and 7 million, let's say, we've got the Fannie Mae small balance loans, which can be up to 30 years fixed and fully amortizing, up to 80% LTV, non-recourse. Freddie Mac offers Freddie Mac small balance loans, which is now applies under the Optigo flag. They have a similar product. They won't go 30 years fixed and fully amortizing, but they do have a program for affordable properties where they'll go up to 15 years fixed, I think. And each of them have their own nuances. FHA will go up to 85% LTV fixed and fully amortizing for up to 35 years and price really aggressively, again, non-recourse. CMBS will do 2 million and up with limited net worth and liquidity requirements. It's very property centric. None of these lenders care about your global cash flow or your personal tax returns. All of them are non-recourse with standard carve-outs. And then there's banks and credit unions, which have a box to that they fill, but and we don't do a ton of work with them outside of construction because the non-recourse products on the market are generally superior. It's generally higher LTV, longer amortization, longer fixed term, which means less interest rate risk, and non-recourse versus full recourse. So when it comes to stabilized multifamily properties and even value add multifamily properties with bridge debt, we're generally able to get more leverage, less recourse, better cash flow from lenders like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we definitely dwelling into the quick rounds. These are going to be quick questions, quick answers. You ready, sir?
I can try. I don't know how good I am at quick, but let me give it a go.
All right. First question. what makes you, Blake, unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
In my business?
You can use your business.
uh, in my
You can do both.
business, well, okay. So in my business, and I guess personally, these things transcend each other. It would be my values. So um, it's you'll always get authenticity, um, honesty, and transparency, and I don't know if I can curse on here, so I'll just say no BS.
All right,
Also,
that was quick enough.
from a
Yeah.
business perspective, I'm also pretty damn good at what I do, and I've hired people that are smarter than me and that have shared values. So
Awesome. Okay. Second question. What was the last book that you read, and what was the one thing that you picked up from that book?
the last book I read was Crossing the Chasm, which is a book about taking high-tech companies from small to medium or large. And the one takeaway from that book was that you have to establish a very niche market. In that book, they called it a beachfront. And they related it to D-Day, with the Americans invading Normandy, that America had to take Europe, but the route started with that beachfront at Normandy. So it's about creating a market within a market that's referenceable, where it could be geographic or otherwise, but where there's a word of mouth component to create an exponential uh, additive to your existing marketing efforts.
Oh wow, yeah, that sounds really fascinating. Yeah, I really like that. Of course, you're busy with all your websites, your company, your loans. I'm sure your other businesses as well as your family. What do you do for fun?
You know, my wife is my best friend in the world. So I would
Oh,
say, yeah. So we live on the beach. We're very lucky. The ocean is warm most of the year. So I think fun would be, uh, you know, walking on the beach, taking a swim in the ocean with my wife. And if I'm being really kind to myself, I would. Uh, I'll box. I like to box, and I like Muay Thai.
nice, nice. Okay, so if there's somebody listening in our conversation and they're thinking, "Wow, I like this Blake guy. I want to get to know Blake, or I want to get to learn more from, as you said, the the learnings that you guys provide online. I think it's multifamily.loans. How can people reach out to you in terms of different sites that you guys offer and to reach out to you directly?
You can send me an email to Blake, Blake, at Janover.Ventures. There's no .com or .net, just .ventures. So Blake at JANOVER.VENTURES. And I'm on LinkedIn. You can probably catch some stuff if you search Blake Janover on LinkedIn. I'm not sure how LinkedIn profiles work, but it's probably something with a / Blake Janover.
Awesome. And can you mention some of your sites?
Oh gosh, yeah. So multifamily.loans is probably the most comprehensive website on the internet for anything that has to do with multifamily financing. hud.loans is probably the most comprehensive website on the internet for anything that has to do with FHA insured multifamily debt. cmbs.loans, commercial real estate.loans, SBA 7A.loans, SBA express.loans, home.loans is a big venture that we recently undertook. It's the most expensive GTLD that was ever sold at the time that we did it. We bought it for $500,000, and we're building a platform around that. But if you go to janover.ventures / brands, you'll get you can see some of what we've got cooking.
Thank you so much, Blake. I really had a wonderful time here talking to you. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. Well, I really appreciate it. This was a lot of fun and it was an unexpected conversation.
I'm glad.